what everybody thinks is, oh, he's the top of the world. But you've got to remember, this company spent most of its career, its 30 years in existence, under the shadow of Intel, under this permanent threat that what it does was going to be taken away. And that's really his mentality. Yes, this is great, this is their moment, but he's already looking for the next thing. He's already looking to extend that run. He's always already looking at what might go wrong. That's who he is, and that's how he does things.
Joshua, describe what drives the Nvidia CEO, because you guys have this great line in the Business Week story. Huang's tendency, even when he's away from the office and noticeably tipsy, is to always be closing. Talk about that more.
Yeah, Jensen Huang is always referred to as Jensen, is a real sort of force of nature personality. He's very intense, and he's always sort of evangelizing for, right now it's for artificial intelligence and the things that you'd really need a lot of Nvidia chips for. And so you'll see him constantly telling you why the future is going to revolve around these enormous data centers full of Nvidia chips.
And Ian, talk a little bit more about just the expansion here. What is the next phase of growth, Ian, for this company?
The expansion is AI has to be everywhere for this to work. Right now you have a very small group of companies, whether it's Microsoft or AWS, that are buying the majority of the gear, putting the majority of these capabilities in place. What really needs to happen is that it has to get out there in the wild. It has to get out there in the economy. Companies have to use it. Consumers have to use it. It has to be part of factories. It has to be part of vehicles. It has to be part of everything to justify that massive spend that we've seen and to keep that massive spend going.
Is it still, though, Ian, about AI inference and training AI models, or is it about something bigger for NVIDIA moving forward? Is it about driverless cars? Is it about humanoid robots? Is it about that next-gen thing that Jensen's watching that we don't know about yet?
Well, you refer to training and inference. Some experts will tell you that the training, the actual creation of the core of AI has kind of happened or is close to being sort of complete. What we need now are models that are more specific and tightly focused, models that can drive your car, models that can tell your factory robots where to go and not to bang into each other and to do things in the most efficient way. That what we need, and that is where inference comes in, because then you have these more specific models that say find their way around a factory. They have to know then and infer in the moment, hey, there's something coming towards me, I need to stop. Or, hey, there's a human being there coming around the corner, I need to not run them over. That's what we're getting to now. Right now, a lot of AI out in the wild is kind of the chatbots. It's reacting to a very limited set of stimulus, text or voice. What we need is AI to be inferring more meaning from the world around it, and that's still a work in progress.
Joshua, what is physical AI, and how is NVIDIA expanding into it? Because you guys mentioned that a number of times in your article.
Sure. Physical AI is basically, instead of chatbots, AI that's operating in the real world. The most obvious example of it right now is autonomous vehicles, something that NVIDIA has been working on for a decade and has actually said would be solved many years ago. But it's also looking at robots, automated factories, basically anything where the AI is moving something around the world. And NVIDIA is very bullish on this because it needs as many applications as possible. And if it can unlock factories and cars and everything, that's a lot bigger than just doing something on the internet.
Joshua, you've been covering technology for years, and I'm just curious, contextually, for you to describe this moment to us as a technology editor. Is this a bigger deal than the rise of the browser in the 90s? Is it bigger than the rise of social media in the early 2000s? Is it on par with the rise of mobile? Like, where is this in your view as a tech editor?
I think what we're looking at right now is that we've seen the sort of laying the groundwork phase of the artificial intelligence era. And now we're waiting to see that this is going to be the size of social media, that this is going to be the size of the browser, that the vision that NVIDIA and other AI companies have laid out is actually going to sweep the economy with the force that they say it's going to, or if it's going to be something more modest. And as Ian said, considering how valuable NVIDIA is, this can't just be a pretty big deal. It has to be an enormous deal for NVIDIA to justify the amount of money it's worth right now.
Ian, I imagine that, while you were writing this, the idea of DeepSeek and other competitors came up in your reporting process. Can you talk a little bit more about just how Nvidia is reacting to the competition and, you know, these companies that are saying that they can do AI cheaper?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that for the fundamentals of what's going on, Nvidia really doesn't have any competition right now. If you want to train a large language model, you're going to do it on Nvidia's gear. At the same time, the enormous expense of doing that and then the expense or the possible expense of deploying that in the real world has got everybody thinking, is there a better way to do this? Is there a faster way to do this? And DeepSeek is arguably the most poignant example so far that raises the question, perhaps we can do this more cheaply, or perhaps we can sort of diffuse a little bit of what we've already done and snap that off and use that in a cheaper way. So there's so much energy, there's so much at stake here. And DeepSeek is really an example of that. And NVIDIA's reaction was, great, this makes it cheaper, this means it's going to be everywhere. That's ultimately good for us. And that's a typical Jensen response. You know, don't deny reality, don't look back, look forward.
Yeah, as you write, and as you and Joshua write, there's this history of booms and busts for the tech.
Yeah.
Infrastructure companies, because their products tend to become commoditized, Ian, that's not happening yet with NVIDIA.
Yeah, and yet is a very powerful word in this sentence. Everybody is reacting like, oh, NVIDIA is the king of the world and they've been, you know, at this for years. They kind of have, but look at the numbers, right? Only like 3 years ago, gaming graphics chips were the biggest part of their revenue. This has happened really, really quickly and very dramatically. There's been a massive transfer of wealth. The key question is, can that transfer of wealth become self-sustaining? And that's what they're working on, right? This isn't an Intel that's been around for decades and in this dominant position. This is something that's happened really quickly and is a very quickly evolving situation.
Joshua, NVIDIA stock is down 10% year to date. It's obviously up a ton in the last few years, but what do you think Jensen thinks about the recent moves in this company? Or does he not think about that stock price at all?
I'm sure he thinks about the stock price because everyone in the world seems to think about the NVIDIA stock price. You know, there's a lot of headwinds that Jensen Huang has been well aware of for quite some time, and they're all coming to a head. You see with tariffs and other barriers on international trade, including a U.S.-China trade war that could have national security implications that will restrict chips specifically. I think the rise of DeepSeek, while he will say that's a great thing, also shows that maybe some of the assumptions about how many chips are going to be needed for each subsequent step in the AI development, you know, maybe those assumptions aren't as ironclad as they thought. And that is why you see him sprinting ahead and trying to get to the next phase, to have these applications start to bear fruit and to have a new story to tell, to keep that moving, that momentum moving.
And to what Josh said there, if Jensen has a genius, it's his ability to never sit still, to always be absorbing all of the input. So you mentioned the stock price. Whatever is bugging investors, he hears it. And then when you go into the next investor presentation, when you go into the next earnings, he's already moved beyond it in the conversation. He integrates a bit of the concerns, such as DeepSeek, into his presentation, into what he's saying, into the points he makes over and over again. And that's true whether it's regarding the stock price or that's true whether it's regarding the technology, that he's always absorbing that information. That's where his genius lies. Whether he's ultimately right or not, whether it plays out like he says it's going to, that's another thing. But what we wanted to convey in this story, as much as anything else, is the level of intensity being brought by somebody who isn't doing a victory lap.
So, Joshua, how does he think it's going to play out? How does Jensen think this is going to play out?
He thinks AI is going to be everywhere. He's, you know, he will tell you that the robots are going to be here. We've been saying that it's going to take however long, but that this is the year that the car problem is solved, and soon you'll see so many autonomous cars on the streets that healthcare will be overhauled. You know, he's there giving you the bull's case if you listen. And you know, whether he believes that deep in his soul, like, we don't know, but he will make the most convincing case possible.